Now, when it comes to Drake, and hold up, run it back. Say it with me because the celebration hasn't ended. Now, when it comes to Drake, listen, guys, I'm still ecstatic. It feels like we won the championship or something right now. But if you are ready to see how after the judge told Drake to stop crying and complaining and get in the booth and rap that well Drake is in absolute and sheer and utter shambles and things have never looked worse for him as genuinely even not even a full 24 hours after losing the lawsuit, his life is falling apart. You know what to do. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe because from the Drake stans who are still acting like they have some sort of a plan and that they are going to win this thing in the long run to everybody else in hip-hop overall within this moment like no other in the history of the genre. Everybody needs to see how the guy who has created one of the biggest messes we have ever had is moving. And with that very point, before we can get into how Drake has actually responded to the worst news that he could have gotten in terms of what he wanted for his own career at this point, what I do want to look at is after all of the excitement yesterday of finding out that this case was dismissed, which really did just feel like the rap version of winning the championship in some extent. And honestly, just in terms of the glory and relief of it, it did feel like the best thing for hip-hop that I have seen since like GNX dropped or the Super Bowl halftime show. Well, with that, Drake is already in trouble. And it's not even because of what he did, but it's because of how his own label has responded to the decision to dismiss the lawsuit in their official statement, which reads, from the outset, this suit was an affront to all artists and their creative expression and never should have seen the light of day. We're pleased with the court's dismissal and look forward to continuing our work successfully promoting Drake's music and investing in his career. And just with this, well, once again, just like Judge Vargas and pretty much everybody who worked on this case, you have to give these people who are not inherently within hip-hop culture and who are not a part of rap music a lot of credit because really to just actually understand and grasp the basic conventions of the culture and then how the expression in rap beef actually works more than somebody who said they studied rap battles for a living did in Drake. But more with this statement when you just see what UMG is saying, what really has me interested here, and this is very big when we talk about what the reaction and how the label would move forward with Drake after this would be is this whole section where after talking about how of course they are happy for what this means for their artist because this is something that they can understand from even the most basic levels when they say they look forward to continuing their work with successfully promoting Drake's music and investing in his career. Here. Pull the contract cause we got to see the splits cupcake. Because seriously, when you just see everything that this guy has done, including the personal subliminal messages at the head of the label and his family, and you see them say this, you really do just wonder what type of deal Drake is really on and how bad it is. But at the very least, when we see this, for all of the people who were saying that Drake was going to go independent and that this was going to be this big move where he was going to be able to break from the industry's control, that's the furthest thing from what's happening here. And really, what it looks like now is that Drake has lost all of his leverage and that he is going to be doing whatever his bosses tell him to because at the end of the day, that is the situation that he is in. And so seriously from that and with the entire theme and ethos around Drake's career at this point in terms of his music and artistic direction with the whole Iceman stuff well being an extension of all of the garbage we saw here just with everything we saw with the Pinocchio stuff and for Drake to pretty much build an entire album around Kendrick Lamar and how he feels the label treated him and for him to just have all of it fail. But then at the same time, the employer who he went against is telling him, we'll see you on Monday and get ready to work. Really, for Drake, and this is the genuinely crazy part about all of this to me, this guy is just trapped within this situation. And I really don't know what he is going to do from here because he's clearly not happy about it. But again, this is the result of all of the choices he has made and constant poor decision after poor decision. And speaking of poor decisions, when I talked about how now that Drake has failed this bad, you know, he is going to pull something out even pettier to just try and take everything even more than he already has down with him. Well, we have found out a portion of what that plan is going to be as after the judge told Drake that everything he is doing is genuinely ridiculous and embarrassing. And you can't all of a sudden flip the rules of a rap beef is something that is not a performative thing that people understand is stretching the truth as opposed to pure fact, which is what he was trying to push. The Cupcake and his Cupcake team are really about to lose every single thing that they possibly have over this. As Abdum released their statement and after they told this entire situation to just get on out of here because it's a crock of garbage, Team Drake came out and released this official statement, which of course this is representing the Cupcake. We intend to appeal today's ruling and we look forward to the Court of Appeals reviewing it. And now with this, I mean, we really are at a point where it just seems like Drake is creating a forever loop of just crying and crashing out over all of his choices, failing, and then the failures of those failures failing even more. And now he is trying to get those failures to be validated because they failed. Does that make sense? Because that's really where we are at. And honestly, if it didn't, that's the exact point I was going for because that is what Drake is pretty much trying to do here. As again he can't just accept the reality because to be honest as already suing over a rap battle was already a way to try and get a consolation prize or to almost go to some sort of a metaphorical court of appeals for just the entire situation and how it turned out. Doing this is now just the literal extension of the delusion we saw by filing this in the first place and ultimately is just showing that you are never going to accept any single person's opinion unless they are trying to tell you that you are right. You could do no wrong. Kendrick Lamar is the worst. And you know what, Drake, you actually failed because everybody was against you. But no, that's just not what happened. And no matter how many things you carrying out on, that is not going to change a single thing at this point, but really to just see that Drake and his team are doing this. I can't wait to see how they get laughed out of the room next time. Because already with the judge really getting into hip-hop culture and understanding just how the exchange of free expression and ideas work and clearly getting it better than Drake, as you can see the transcript, she started to laugh at how ridiculous what Drake was trying to push was based on the double standard that he set. Well, overall, we are at a point where this is just so ridiculous and it's so baffling that you could even be this low of a person that this is somehow the direction that you have taken every single thing in. And I mean, I guess you could say from the perspective of the team that Drake put together to try and actually handle this case, you know, it's the Drookie meme. They're trying to do what they have to do to say they've done everything to help him, but they really know there's no other options. And I guess from that perspective, if you look at it like that, they are just doing this as a simple formality or to try to stand their ground. But I really just do think as this is such a basic issue that every single person besides Drake fans and Drake have been able to comprehend and just see the bling hypocrisy of. Nobody's going to push this thing any further because if they did, it would seriously get into some messy territory, which was why we were worried about it for the first place. Because beyond even rap music, this affects all of just speech and art and media as a whole. And so for Drake, what the clear thing that he is showing is going to be the status quo just forever at this point is that he is going to keep caring till he can't care anymore. Because just to see this pattern of viciously not ever taking any sort of accountability or even just accepting the results of what the world is showing you and always thinking that somebody's against you and that there's this bigger thing to ruin your career and that everything is just not working. So you keep having to get approval from other things that then don't work and then you just repeat the cycle over and over again. I mean, this has just got to stop sometime, right? And I thought maybe it would now that we have reached a point where at least the suit has been dismissed to what we can see now. But really for Drake and based on how petty he has been and how far he has dragged this thing already, I still do think that there is a lot more to see here. But now beyond the back and forth between Drake's team and UMG and what they're trying to do to continue the worst thing that we have ever seen to hip-hop to just continue to happen despite everybody laughing at it and telling him it's trash. Well, in the midst of all of that, we have actually heard from the Cupcake himself. And again, in a way that is very official has directly from Drake after maybe the worst thing in his entire career in terms of what he wanted to get out of this and how high he made the stakes because of his own failure. Well, after all of that and finding out something that has left him in a place where pretty much all of his options are gone now, as again Drake's rap career, that's been over. His legacy and respect in hip-hop, that's gone. And now in terms of the industry and the rooms where he was trying to carry out to them over this case, well, they have laughed him out of there as well and they told him that he has nothing to stand on and that this thing is ridiculous. And now in the midst of all of that and finding this massive news out, Drake has spoken up, but in a way that's very different at that, as he's not being directly loud and obnoxious and trying to brag or bait people into believing that he has more going on or has this bigger plan than he ever actually does, but in a way that I think is very telling of where he is at right now and where he feels, which honestly is just absolute disappointment. And again for Drake, I said this yesterday when this all happened. And I'm sure he is thinking about this. And I'm sure he thinks about this more and more as this is all going down. And was it worth losing everything to try and get across whatever you were trying to get across to try and rewrite the fact that you lost a beef? And so with this, what Drake did is what Drake does, which is some of the most shameful and embarrassing things you ever could, which still both comes from not addressing these situations that you put yourself in face on. And then also, and even more baffling, just acting like everything is okay when really deep down inside, Cupcake, we know who you are. We know what you have put on display, and we know how low you have gotten. We know you are losing it over this. And so to come out after all of this and post some happy birthdays, which you know, you're trying to shout out OVO and act like everybody's together and everything's all good. And even with the first one, you can see that there still is some sneak in here. As you can clearly see, Drake has a statue of Tupac wherever this is, which it does seem to be somewhere that's important to him as this is a picture of him and one of his good buddies. Well, overall with that, I guess that is the response that Drake is giving, which all does come down to that Tupac statue, which, however you want to put it. After all of this happened and everybody's talking about Kendrick Lamar and everybody's celebrating for hip-hop, well, for you to put up this picture where Tupac is in the back, we can all see the play here and we can all just look and really understand what you're trying to do to just once again still, when you think about it, subliminally send some sort of a message that either you have a plan or that you're still just dragging this thing out and trying to annoy Kendrick and any of the hip-hop purists by acting like you are super corny Jones and that you have all of these items that represent and define hip-hop history and that you hang them up like trophies in your places. And just off that point, if this is really the last resort of what you think you can do to try to send any sort of a message to anybody, well, I guess I get it from how bad of a place everything has looked and with how bad of a tactician that you have shown you are. But honestly, at this point, as we are just seeing more and more turn out bad for you because of your own choices and because of how much of a crash out that you are, Cupcake, all of this stuff just holds little to no impact. And you know, when Pusha T was doing interviews after he dropped, So Be It. And he was talking about his beef with Travis Scott, and he said despite whatever issues he has with Travis, he was saying how at the end of the day, it's Travis Scott. He's harmless. He can't do anything as an MC. At this point, you could have anything from Tupac or any other all-time rap legend at this point, but is it really going to matter? Because at the end of the day, you're Drake and you're the cupcake Karen Lubri ballerina. And well, the only thing you study for a living is crashing out and humiliating yourself. So, you're not going to be able to do anything with this. Listen, honestly again, we know that no matter what gear you can get and no matter what you can show off and try to act like you won or like it's yours, it's not going to equate to anything other than just disappointment and disdain for your entire career more and more as a whole. So really with these things and with Drake trying to show off the Tupac statue to have some sort of a gotcha moment, the ship has sailed for that and it's not getting the reaction it once did because we've all seen the trick and we've all seen the grift and nobody wants to play into it anymore because they know the way everything ends when your name is Cupcake Drake. And really with this, even for OVO at this point, which I think they are going to need their own full piece to really just explore and talk about how they are taking this because that's a whole mess in of itself. I do think deep down inside for Drake, everybody, no matter what side you're on right now, is just realizing what Drake really is, which is something that he tried to call Kendrick. I remember when he made a post and tried to act like he was this bigger and better artist, which was that whole thing when he called Kendrick a one-trick pony and acted like he was this amazing, versatile person who could do pretty much anything, although his songs that sound different are all taken from other artists. And at that, while Kendrick goes into so many different layers in his music, Drake obviously does the most superficial and surface-level stuff. But that's not even the point of the conversation. So, let's stop that right there and let's just get back into the real ideology of Drake at this point, which really just does seem like he is building every single thing around the very principle on the fact that he is always acting like there is this rabbit that he is going to pull out of this hat and that he always has this big trick ready and that there's always this great thing that's going to happen. But again, if we go all the way back to March of 2024 when like that dropped and the beef started all the way to now, there have been like 30 or 40 different things, and I honestly may actually compile a full list very soon. So if I do that, I will get that number of just things and moments that Drake was going to make and Drake was going to have that were going to change rap forever and that were going to ruin his rivals and that were just going to leave us sitting in a place where we were all seemingly going to regret the stances we took, the sides we picked. And according to Drake and OVO, we were supposed to eventually find out that Kendrick was the worst and he worked with the industry and that everything was fake and that Drake has been the hero all along. But of course, that didn't happen. And it's honestly the furthest thing from reality. And almost what I admire about Drake is how long he's been able to keep this game going because somehow even after all of this time well for OVO, they are still acting like Drake is going to pull something out of a hat, which I don't know what I have to tell you. But listen, he has been doing this since the night Family Matters dropped. And nothing, and I mean nothing since that very moment has been able to get him within an 100-point deficit of what Kendrick Lamar has been able to do at the same time. And so let's just stop that and stop acting like Drake is going to do something other than grift the fact that he has something bigger planned because that's kind of his whole MO now. And we have to just accept what's really going on here, which is now that an artist who just felt like they were spoiled and entitled to the entire industry and throne of rap and the keys of the game. Well, after one of the worst eras in rap where everybody was just kind of phoning things in and letting Drake have his moment because they really didn't care about the craft and sport of it and they just wanted to get their numbers from him and leave it at there. And that goes for everybody from Travis Scott to J. Cole to all of the other people who define the Drake era. Well, after things got tough and one rapper challenged him for the throne, the grift mask that Drake was hiding behind was just exposed like we have never seen before. And we are now at a point where we are just realizing not that Drake has had this big falloff or anything like that when you really break it down. But in terms of Drake being this uncalculated, this messy, and this much of a loser, this has always been who he is. And he's just had the right things covering it up for quite a while now. And that very point to me is just so telling about where we are all going and what we really do need to realize, which is that for OVO and everybody who supports Drake is not like Drake was ever this number one or maybe even the number two and that he had that spot deservingly so in rap. But really if we just break it down, this guy was just the product of the way the industry was moving and got in at the right time to take the right spot that he had. But he never actually had the merit to stand on what he was trying to do. And now that he's been called out for it and well, we've been here for over a year at this point just watching him move down and down the power rankings and humiliate himself more and more. I just think we need to all be aware of that and really properly rank and estimate Drake all across the board at this point in his career. And so really with that point with how Drake has started to move after losing this lawsuit despite whatever things they are doing to drag this out, everybody just needs to realize that this is who Drake is and we are only going to continue to just see him do more embarrassing things while at the same time fail to redeem himself on any level with even the most minute and small things. But you know, as this is all happening for Drake and of course rap got a huge win at the same time because it has been hip-hop against the very ideology and sentiments he's been pushing here. And really just for Drake to get exposed and for people to find out who he really is, that's the best thing that just could have went down in this time because with the fall of Drake, all that really means to me and I think a lot of other people is that hip-hop has a better chance to get to its next golden age than ever. And so yeah, that's what I got in terms of how Drake and his team are moving and scrambling like losers after all of this has went down. And if you want to stay up to date with everything that Drake is going to be doing in this time and also just how the rap world is going to move after such a pivotal thing happened, which there is a lot to discuss there from Drake to Kendrick Lamar to a lot of other people. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. And also channel memberships are now live. So if you want to support the channel, you can do that. It is a great way to do so. Once again, I just want to say thank you for all the support. It really does mean a lot that you watch these videos and you sit down and have these discussions with me, which I think are so important in this time in hip-hop where just everything has never been under a bigger limelight because of the way the events have folded. And now, if you want to see how right before this, well, Drake officially lost the lawsuit, and with just the reaction and excitement of it, what I'm going to say is if you haven't seen this already, you got to check it out because I don't think I've ever been more excited or just happy in a video because genuinely this was just an all-time great moment that we are never going to forget and we are going to keep the excitement going. Check out the suggested video.